Mom, we just need $50,000 to start our business. You'll get it all back, plus interest. That's what my daughter said before disappearing with my retirement fund. I trusted her completely. She'd always been responsible, even managed my finances when I was sick last year. Turns out blood is thicker than water and significantly more expensive. I never thought I'd be 65 and starting over financially because my own flesh and blood decided my bank account was their personal ATM. But here we are. And trust me, what happened next makes those pyramid scheme nightmares look like child's play at a sandbox. The golden child era. What parent doesn't think their kid hung the moon? I certainly did with my daughter Melissa. From the moment she took her first wobbly steps across our living room floor, I was completely gone, totally wrapped around her little finger. I've got a photo album filled with dance recitals where she's always slightly off step, but smiling so big you'd think she was the star. Honor roll certificates, softball trophies that were mostly for participation. But hey, in my eyes, she was basically an Olympic athlete in training. I spent 30 years building what I thought was a perfect mother-daughter relationship. Bedtime stories, kiss boo-boos, late night talks about boys. Me showing up to every event with my camera ready, cheering louder than any other parent. Her saying, "Mom, you're my best friend," while we wore matching Christmas pajamas and shared inside jokes that made us both laugh until we cried. Looking back now, I should have noticed the patterns. She had a talent for timing her calls perfectly. She'd reach out on a random Tuesday, spend 20 minutes asking about my garden or book club, topics she never actually cared about. She'd listen attentively, making small comments like, "You're so good at explaining things, Mom," or, "I wish I had your patience." Then she'd casually mention her car needed repairs or her rent was due early. She made me feel like I was the most important person in her world right before asking for money. "Mom, no one understands me like you do," she'd say, and I'd reach for my checkbook before she even finished her sentence. "Mom, I just feel so safe talking to you about this." And my wallet would practically open itself. The formula was consistent: compliment, personal connection, cash request, perfected over years. When Tom joined our family, everything changed. Melissa met him at a charity event she'd only attended because I bought the ticket. 6 months later, they were engaged, transforming into a power couple with big dreams and bigger spending habits. He worked in finance, which I later discovered meant occasionally day trading while watching YouTube videos on getting rich quick. She got a job at a high-end boutique that gave her a discount on clothes she still couldn't afford. Their wedding cost $35,000, mostly from my savings account because it's a once-in-a-lifetime day, Mom. I documented every milestone in photo albums. Her first steps, graduations, prom, their wedding day. Those albums now sit in a cardboard box in my garage. Can't quite bring myself to look at them or throw them out. The warning signs were everywhere. There was the temporary loan for their security deposit that never got repaid. The emergency credit card that mysteriously reached its limit buying designer shoes. The time they borrowed my car and returned it with an empty tank and a mysterious dent they swore was already there. Tom would describe business ventures that were always about to make it big. "Next month, we'll pay you back everything plus interest," he'd say with that smile that never reached his eyes. Melissa would add, "We just need a little help with cash flow right now." Their cash flowed in one direction only from my accounts to theirs. What I didn't realize was how these small betrayals of trust were setting the stage for the financial hurricane headed my way. Each time I said yes, each time I transferred money, just this once, I was handing them a blueprint of my vulnerabilities. How did my daughter convince me to hand over my life savings? By leveraging 30 years of being my perfect child. It wasn't some internet scammer or Nigerian prince that took everything I had worked for. It was the girl whose skinned knees I had bandaged, whose tears I had wiped away. "Mom, you've always believed in me when no one else did," she said over dinner when they pitched their investment opportunity. And she was right. I had always believed in her. "That's what moms do. This is my chance to make you proud," she told me, her eyes getting teary in that way I now realize was just another manipulation tool. "I want to take care of you the way you've always taken care of me." The cruelest part, I was touched. I thought how wonderful it was that my daughter wanted to secure my financial future. It felt like the ultimate parenting success story. My financial advisor always said, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. But he never mentioned what to do when it comes from someone whose diapers you changed. When I handed over that check for $50,000, my entire retirement fund, Melissa hugged me and whispered, "You won't regret this, Mom." She was wrong. It's pretty much all I regret. So there I was, watching 30 years of careful saving, of coupon clipping and vacation skipping walk out my front door in the form of my daughter and her husband, my retirement fund converted to a check in her designer handbag. The pitch of a lifetime. It happened over lasagna, my specialty, the one with the homemade sauce that simmers all day and 3 different cheeses layered just right. The one Melissa always requested for her birthday dinners growing up. The one she suddenly had a craving for on a random Tuesday night. "Mom, I'm just really missing your cooking," she said on the phone. "Could we come over tomorrow? Just a casual dinner." I should have known something was up. In our 15 years of adult mother-daughter relationship, Melissa had never once used the word casual to describe anything. This is a woman who wore makeup to the hospital when she gave birth. She'd once rescheduled a dinner because her statement necklace didn't match her shoes. Even her grocery lists were color-coded. But there I was, chopping onions and feeling special because my daughter wanted my cooking. They showed up 15 minutes late, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual was Tom carrying a leather portfolio and Melissa having this weird, nervous energy, checking her lipstick right before ringing the doorbell. She hugged me too tightly, complimented my outfit too enthusiastically. I noticed, but I filed it away in that special mental folder labeled Things Mothers Pretend Not to See. We made it through the salad course with normal conversation. Then, just as I was serving the lasagna, Tom cleared his throat and said, "Carol, we actually have something exciting to share with you." Next thing I know, my dining room table, the same one where Melissa had done her homework for 12 years, was covered with printouts, glossy brochures, and a laptop open to a PowerPoint presentation. An actual PowerPoint presentation. In my dining room. While my lasagna got cold, it's a health food franchise, Melissa explained, her eyes bright with that look she used to get when she wanted a new bike. Organic smoothies, locally sourced grain bowls, wellness shots. Exactly what our community needs. Tom took over, clicking through slides showing mock-ups of a sleek store with concrete floors and hanging plants. We've secured exclusive rights to open the first 3 locations in our county, he said, like he was doing me a favor. The company's very selective about their franchisees. The numbers seemed too good to be true. Triple my investment in just 2 years. There were charts with lines going up at angles that would make a mountain climber nervous. Projections that made it sound like we'd be millionaires by Christmas. The best part is, Melissa said, squeezing my hand across the table, "We want you to be part of it. Our primary investor." She looked at me with those eyes. The same ones that convinced me to buy her a $200 prom dress in 1998 when we barely had grocery money. "You always said you wanted to be part of a family business." Tom kept using phrases straight from a late-night infomercial. "Ground floor opportunity. Limited time offer." My stomach tightened with each buzzword. I felt a cold sweat forming at my temples. Other investors are making a killing. Tom said, sliding a paper across the table with testimonials. I noticed none of them had last names, just Sarah T. and Mike B. My throat went dry as I realized how rehearsed this all felt. They had answers for everything. Health food market research, a detailed business plan, projected cash flow statements, franchise agreement summaries. I remember asking, shouldn't we get someone else to look at this? Maybe my financial advisor could review the numbers. The shift in their faces was subtle but immediate, like watching a cloud pass over the sun. Mom, Melissa said, her voice dropping to that serious tone, this opportunity won't last. The company is only offering this territory until the end of the week. Tom jumped in. Traditional financial advisors don't understand the franchise model. They're too conservative. He actually patted my hand. My chest tightened with indignation, but I said nothing. We don't want to pressure you, Melissa said, which was exactly what she was doing. But Tom's parents were interested in investing too, and we wanted to give you first opportunity. The funny thing is, I'd meet Tom's parents at Thanksgiving 3 months later, and they'd never even heard about this business. I sat there, fork forgotten in my hand. $50,000 was my retirement fund, the money I'd saved working as a school secretary for 35 years. But then I looked at Melissa, and my heart ached with the desire to believe in her, to support her dreams. My hands trembled slightly as I considered what this decision meant. They slid paperwork across my dining table, official-looking documents with embossed logos, and lots of small print. Don't worry about all the legal jargon, Tom said, flipping through to the signature page. It's standard franchise agreement stuff. We'll take care of everything, Melissa added, sliding a pen toward me. You can just sit back and watch your money grow. Looking back, the red flags were waving so hard they could have generated electricity. The urgency, the defensiveness, the don't ask questions attitude, but I missed them all. Or maybe I saw them and chose to ignore them because acknowledging them would mean acknowledging something about my daughter I wasn't ready to face. I signed the papers somewhere between dessert and coffee. I wrote a check for $50,000 and handed it to my daughter with a trust that makes me cringe now. You've made the right decision, Mom, Melissa said, hugging me tight. This is going to change all our lives. She was right about that part, at least. Fastest way to lose $50,000 without going to Vegas, folks. The honeymoon phase. For the first 3 months, everything seemed perfect. Absolutely picture perfect. Every month, like clockwork, I'd receive a statement in the mail showing my investment growing. 10% returns in just the first quarter. The papers looked official enough. Letterhead with the franchise logo, numbers in neat columns, even a personalized note thanking me for my vision in supporting this groundbreaking wellness concept. Melissa called me at least once a week with updates. Mom, you won't believe how fast things are moving, she'd gush. The contractors are finalizing the build-out quotes. The franchise team loves our location. We're interviewing potential managers next week. She used industry terms I didn't understand but was too embarrassed to question. I just nodded along, feeling simultaneously important and ignorant. About 6 weeks after I'd written that check, they invited me to see the construction site. We drove to a strip mall on the edge of town, one of those newer developments with a Starbucks and a yoga studio. There was an empty storefront with paper covering the windows. Tom unlocked the door with a flourish. Welcome to the future home of Pure Life Nutrition, he announced, gesturing around the empty space. The space was completely bare, just concrete floors and white walls with a small display in the center. There were architectural renderings showing sleek countertops, color swatches, and a foam board sign reading, coming soon, Pure Life Nutrition. They'd even set up a table with sample products, bottles of green juice, and protein powders with the franchise logo. We're finalizing permits now, Tom explained, pointing to various corners. Juice bar there, seating area here, grab-and-go coolers along that wall. I felt proud looking at those plans. My daughter, the business owner, my investment, making something real in the world. I took pictures to show my friends at book club. The first crack in their story appeared a week later. I bumped into Tom's brother Mike at the grocery store. So what do you think about Tom and Melissa's new venture? I asked. The health food place. The look of confusion on his face still haunts me. What health food place? He asked. The franchise they're opening, I explained. Pure Life Nutrition in that new strip mall on Oakmont. Oh, he said after an awkward pause. Yeah, I think I remember them mentioning something about that. Hasn't come up recently, though. That moment stayed with me. Why wouldn't Tom's brother know about their big business venture? Other things started piling up. Whenever I asked to see paperwork, the franchise agreement, the lease, construction contracts, they always had excuses. The papers were at their other house, or with their lawyer, or at franchise headquarters. Always somewhere just out of reach. Meanwhile, Melissa and Tom's lifestyle improved dramatically. They arrived at Sunday dinner in a brand new SUV, just a lease, Tom explained vaguely. They mentioned a business trip to Bali. The franchise has an annual retreat for owners, Melissa claimed. Then there was the diamond tennis bracelet on Melissa's wrist, just sterling silver and cubic zirconia, she insisted, though I recognized real diamonds. Inconsistencies multiplied. The location moved from the Oakmont Strip Mall to downtown for better foot traffic. The opening date shifted from early summer to probably fall to first quarter next year, without explanation. The other investors remained nameless despite my questions. 3 months in, I called the franchise company directly. I'm sorry, ma'am, the customer service rep said. We don't have any record of a new franchise location and development in your area. My heart sank, but I made excuses for them. Maybe the paperwork wasn't processed yet. Could you check under Melissa or Thomas Griffin? I asked. I don't show any franchise agreements with anyone by that name. She replied. I called Melissa afterward, keeping my voice casual, and mentioned the call. She didn't miss a beat. Oh, Mom, corporate customer service doesn't have access to new development information. That's handled by the franchise development office. They're very secretive about new locations until everything is finalized. The monthly statements continued showing steady growth, but I noticed problems, changing fonts, inconsistent number formatting, slightly different letterheads. Once, I spotted my maiden name, which I hadn't used in 40 years. They looked increasingly like something typed up in Microsoft Word. The moment I knew came 4 months after writing that check. After a doctor's appointment, near the strip mall, I decided to see how construction was progressing. What I found was a storefront with a big "For Lease" sign. The space was completely empty, no construction materials, no permits, nothing. I called the number on the lease sign from the parking lot. How long has this space been available? I asked the realtor. It's been vacant for about 8 months, she told me. We've had some interest, but no signed leases yet. Standing there, staring at an empty storefront that was supposed to be our family business, I finally faced the truth. There was no franchise. There was no business. The only thing being constructed was an elaborate web of lies, and I was caught right in the middle of it. The money trail mystery. After finding that empty storefront, I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. A real one, not some guy I found on Craigslist. His name was Ray, and he had an office above a sandwich shop downtown that smelled like pastrami and regret. I felt ridiculous walking up those stairs, like I was in some bad TV movie where the betrayed mother gets revenge. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about finding out where my money, my entire retirement, had actually gone. Family cases are always the hardest, Ray said after I explained my situation, not looking up from his notepad. He didn't seem shocked or sympathetic, which was oddly comforting. Just another day, just another family stealing from each other. But money leaves trails. Always does. It took Ray exactly 2 weeks to confirm my suspicions. There was no health food franchise, no business license, no franchise agreement, no corporation registered in their names, no permits filed with the city, no lease signed on any commercial property. The entire business was a fiction created for me alone. What Ray discovered made me wish he'd found nothing at all. Using his contacts at various financial institutions, he traced my $50,000 check like a river flowing into smaller and smaller tributaries until it disappeared into the ground. It had been deposited into an account called Pure Life Enterprises, opened 1 week before their lasagna pitch dinner. From there, the money moved quickly, transferred to their personal checking account, then immediately split into several directions. Ray handed me a folder showing exactly where my retirement had gone. A $15,000 wire transfer to a timeshare company in Orlando. A $12,400 payment to an electronics store for a complete home theater system. Almost $8,000 to a high-end furniture store. Around $5,000 spread across restaurants and bars in a single weekend. And the one that felt like a physical slap, $10,300 to a local boat dealer as a down payment on a 22-foot pontoon boat. The receipt showed the boat's name, which they'd paid extra to have custom painted. Mom's retirement. They'd named their boat after what they'd stolen from me. I struggled to comprehend how I would afford my blood pressure medication while they floated around the lake on my financial security. There's more, Ray said, sliding another folder across his desk. Inside were copies of withdrawal authorization forms from my bank, forms I supposedly signed. The signatures looked like mine, but some were clearly forged. The loops in my cursive C weren't consistent. The slant changed between forms. They had access to your checkbook, practiced your signature, and gradually withdrew money hoping you wouldn't notice the smaller amounts, Ray explained. I remembered all the times they'd been in my house alone, all the times I'd asked Melissa to grab my checkbook from my desk, all the Sunday dinners where they'd arrive early to help set up while I was in the shower. The evidence showed they'd taken an additional $30,000 over the previous year using checks from my checkbook, checks I couldn't even tell whether I'd signed. Some were for amounts I might reasonably have given them. $500 here, $1,200 there. Amounts I might have written off as helping out during tight times. There's one more thing, Ray said, his voice softening. And it's not good. The third folder contained credit card statements for an account I'd never seen before. A card in my name, with my social security number, but sent to their address. Current balance, $25,000. Maxed out. This business expense account had been used for purchases at Nordstrom, Best Buy, Southwest Airlines, Royal Caribbean Cruises, Pottery Barn, and the Home Depot. Charges for restaurants in cities I'd never visited. This is identity theft. Ray said simply, clear and documentable. But it's my daughter, I said, as if that somehow made it legal. Doesn't matter who did it. It's still a crime. As Ray's investigation continued, the total amount kept climbing, beyond the initial $50,000 check, beyond the $30,000 in forged withdrawals, beyond the $25,000 credit card debt. Ray found 3 more credit cards opened in my name. Another bank account I never knew about. A car loan for Tom's new truck with my name as co-signer. In total, how much did they take? I finally asked, based on what we've documented, nearly $110,000. plus another roughly $35,000 in interest accumulating debt in your name. That number represented my entire adult life of careful saving, every extra shift at the school, every vacation I hadn't taken, every time I bought store-brand groceries instead of name brand. That's enough to buy a small house in some states, I said. Yes, ma'am, it is. When the shock wore off, questions flooded in. How long had they been planning this? Was any part of our relationship real? Did they ever intend to pay me back? But the question that kept me up that night, what kind of mother raises a child capable of this deception? Where had I gone so wrong? Ray had enough evidence for a criminal case. Identity theft, fraud, forgery, grand larceny. Take the weekend, he advised. Think about what you want to do. The Confrontation comedy. I invited them to Sunday dinner, made the lasagna again, because why not be dramatic? It seemed fitting. The same meal that started this whole mess should be there for the confrontation scene. I spent all day cooking, just like before, simmering the sauce, layering the cheese, making the garlic bread from scratch. The only difference was that this time, between the bread basket and the salad bowl, I placed a thick manila folder with financial investigation stamped across the front in big red letters. The doorbell rang at 6 on the dot. I smoothed my sweater, checked my reflection, and opened the door. Hey, Mom. Melissa chirped, leaning in for our usual hug. Tom stood behind her with a bottle of wine, the exact same kind they'd brought to the investment pitch dinner. Either remarkably tone-deaf or brazenly confident. The moment they spotted the folder was like watching someone sit on a tack in slow motion. First came the double take, that quick glance, then the longer stare. Then Melissa froze mid-step, while Tom's hand tightened around the wine bottle neck. The blood drained from Melissa's face while Tom's ears turned bright red. Let's sit down, I said, gesturing to their chairs. Dinner's ready. They moved like robots, eyes never leaving that folder as they took their seats. I served the lasagna and sat down, unfolding my napkin with the theatrical precision of a magician about to perform their signature trick. What's this, Mom? Melissa finally asked, pointing at the folder, but not touching it. Her voice was high and thin, like when she was caught skipping class in high school. She suddenly became very interested in rearranging her silverware, moving her fork a quarter inch to the left, then back again. Tom, meanwhile, developed an intense fascination with my ceiling fan. Did you get new light fixtures? He asked, his voice cracking like a teenage boy's. I took another bite of lasagna, chewed thoroughly, and dabbed my lips before answering. I hired a private investigator. I said, my voice steady. He put together a very interesting report. I flipped open the folder and pulled out a color photograph. Their pontoon boat docked at the marina. The name, Mom's Retirement, clearly visible on the stern in Johnny Blue script. I was wondering, I said, setting the photo next to the bread basket, why Mom's Retirement is floating in a marina rather than sitting in my bank account. The silence was so complete, I could hear the wall clock ticking in the kitchen. Tom coughed, then started cutting his lasagna into increasingly microscopic pieces without eating any. Melissa stared at the photo, like she was trying to telepathically make it disappear. Mom, Tom finally said, we've been having a temporary cash flow problem. What business? I asked pleasantly. The one that doesn't exist. The franchise deal hit some unexpected complications. He continued, sweating like a popsicle in July. The investors are still on board. What investors? I pressed. The imaginary ones? Or just me, the only actual investor in your imaginary business? Melissa jumped in, tears already forming with Oscar-worthy precision. We were going to surprise you with the profits next month, she said, reaching for my hand. I moved mine to my lap. The first location is almost ready. I pulled out the realtor's confirmation that no lease had ever been signed. Is that so? I asked, because according to the property management company, that space has been vacant for 8 months. Tom tried a different approach. We pivoted the business model, he said, using air quotes around pivoted, like we were on Shark Tank. We found a more efficient approach. Is that approach called stealing money from your mother-in-law? I asked. I continued pulling documents from the folder, credit card statements, withdrawal slips, receipts from their shopping sprees. With each new piece of evidence, their excuses grew more elaborate and less coherent. When I pointed to purchases at Gucci and Apple, Tom actually said, we needed to look successful to attract investors. It's called fake it till you make it in business. The best part came with the boat payment receipt. Melissa claimed they'd named it after me as a tribute because they were thinking of me while spending my money. It was going to be a surprise, she explained, her voice taking on that wheedling quality. We were going to give you a party on it. It was meant to be symbolic, your investment floating us to success. Their final defense. We were borrowing temporarily. Tom insisted, looking wounded. We were going to pay it back plus interest. With what money? I asked. With cryptocurrency investments, he said, leaning forward conspiratorially. I've been developing a proprietary trading algorithm. After I laid out all the evidence and told them I was filing police reports for fraud, they had the audacity to ask if they could take the leftover lasagna home. We haven't had your cooking in a while, Melissa said, as if this was just a minor disagreement rather than the complete destruction of our relationship. I packed it up for them, all of it. Somehow it seemed fitting that they should take the last of my lasagna, just like they'd taken everything else. The family fallout fiasco. News travels fast in families, especially the juicy kind involving theft and betrayal. My phone started blowing up within hours of the confrontation dinner. I hadn't even finished washing the good china when the first call came in. By morning, my voicemail was full, my text messages were overflowing, and family members I hadn't spoken to in years were suddenly very concerned about my financial welfare. My son Jake called first, which wasn't surprising. He and Melissa had always had that competitive sibling relationship, the kind where they'd fight like cats and dogs, but defend each other fiercely against outsiders. Except this time, Jake was firmly on Team Mom. I'll beat some sense into Tom, he promised, his voice tight with that protective son energy. It was sweet but completely unhelpful since Jake is 5 feet 7 inches and literally runs screaming from the room when he sees a spider. The last time he tried to kill one, he fell off the coffee table and sprained his wrist. Tom, meanwhile, is 6 feet 2 inches and goes to the gym regularly. The mental image of Jake trying to beat sense into anyone was both touching and mildly hilarious. Thanks, honey, I said, but I think we'll let the lawyers handle this one. What I didn't expect was how quickly the family would split into factions. It resembled a forest fire cutting through woodland, creating clear, dramatic divisions with some racing toward the truth and others desperately fleeing from it. Team Mom was led by Jake and included my younger sister Ruth, my brother Dave, and most of my friends from book club who aren't technically family, but might as well be after 15 years of monthly wine and literary criticism. They offered everything from legal referrals to spare bedrooms if I needed to downsize. Then there was Team, maybe she misunderstood the investment. My sister Barbara called the day after the confrontation dinner, her voice dripping with condescension. Carol, she said, using my full name like she was talking to a confused child, is it possible you agreed to this arrangement and just forgot some of the details? I nearly dropped the phone. Forgot that I agreed to buy my daughter a boat instead of funding a business? Forgot that I approved credit cards in my name that I never saw? Forgot giving them permission to forge my signature on withdrawal slips? Well, Barbara replied, memory can be tricky, at our age. Apparently in Barbara's world, people regularly forget handing over their entire life savings. In my world, I remember exactly how many miles are on my car, the price of eggs at 3 different grocery stores, and every single detail of how my daughter systematically robbed me blind. My brother-in-law Ted kept sending me links to articles about elder financial abuse, not helpful links about how to recover from it. Mind you, just depressing statistics. I finally texted him back. I'm 65, not 95, Ted. I'm not an elder. I just got conned by someone I trusted completely. He responded with a thumbs up emoji. Helpful. The real kicker came when my mother called. My 87-year-old mother, who still writes checks for her utility bills because she doesn't trust online banking. Carol, she said, her voice shaky. Are you sure you didn't give them permission to use that money differently than you originally discussed? Melissa was always such a good girl. That's when it hit me. The golden child effect extended beyond just me. The entire family had this image of Melissa as the perfect granddaughter who could do no wrong. The cognitive dissonance was too much for some people to process. Mom, I said slowly, Melissa forged my signature, opened credit cards in my name without my knowledge, and stole over $100,000 from me. There's no misunderstanding here. Well, my mother said after a long pause, family is still family. What does that even mean? That I should accept being robbed because the thief shares my DNA? The most bizarre responses came from people on the periphery. My cousin's wife, Denise, who I've met exactly 3 times, somehow felt qualified to post about the situation on Facebook. Please pray for our family during this difficult misunderstanding. She wrote, tagging me, money can tear families apart, but we must remember that blood is thicker than water. It's not a misunderstanding when someone steals your life savings. And the full saying actually means chosen relationships are stronger than family ones. All this family drama culminated in what was objectively the most excruciating Thanksgiving dinner ever planned. My sister Ruth insisted we needed to maintain normalcy and not let this situation destroy family traditions, which is how I found myself agreeing to attend a holiday gathering where both the victim and perpetrators of a major financial crime would be passing each other the cranberry sauce. It'll be healing, Ruth promised. It was not. My nephew Kevin kept trying to change the subject. How about those Seahawks? He'd blurt out randomly, as if football scores could erase 6 figures of theft. My cousin Bill appointed himself family mediator despite having 0 qualifications. What if they paid you back $200 a month for the next, He did some quick mental math, realized it would take over 45 years, and trailed off awkwardly. Nothing brings out family loyalty quite like financial fraud, just not necessarily loyalty to the victim. I learned that blood might be thicker than water, but money is thicker than both. The Thanksgiving Showdown. Picture 15 adults and 4 children crammed around my dining table, all pretending we're not sitting on a powder keg of family drama. My sister Ruth insisted on hosting the healing Thanksgiving dinner where Melissa and Tom would clear things up because nothing says holiday spirit like confronting financial criminals over turkey. Ruth's house has that perfect suburban vibe with the farmhouse decor that looks straight out of a catalog. Too bad it couldn't hide the tension thick enough to cut with the fancy carving knife she'd set out for the turkey. It'll give everyone closure, Ruth had said when she proposed this terrible idea. Plus, the kids shouldn't miss out on family traditions because of adult problems. Adult problems. That's what we're calling 6-figure theft now. I almost didn't go. Spent the whole morning staring at my closet. What exactly does one wear to dinner with the daughter who stole your retirement? I settled on a blue sweater that Jake once told me brought out my eyes. Figured I'd need all the confidence I could get. Everyone arrived in awkward waves. My brother Dave brought green bean casserole and concerned expressions. My mother showed up with my nephew Kevin, who immediately escaped to watch football. Smart kid. Barbara and Ted arrived with identical forced smiles and a store-bought pie. Melissa and Tom arrived last, 20 minutes late, carrying a pumpkin pie and rehearsed apology faces, slightly furrowed brows, small sad smiles, eyes trying to look sorry but mostly looking afraid of consequences. Melissa wore a modest sweater I'd never seen before. No designer logos in sight. Tom dressed like he was interviewing for a bank job he wouldn't get. The first 20 minutes filled with weather talk and compliments about the stuffing. My nephew's wife, Sarah, kept trying to lighten the mood with turkey facts. Did you know turkeys can have heart attacks? She offered during a particularly heavy silence. My cousin Pat snorted into his wine glass while my brother-in-law Ted whispered, "Just like me during this dinner." Ruth had arranged the seating with all the strategic planning of a military operation. Melissa and Tom at one end, me at the other, sympathetic relatives placed as buffers between us. My heart squeezed when my grandson Ethan waved at me from the kids' table. Halfway through dinner, Dave cleared his throat. The conversation died instantly. "I think we need to address the elephant in the room," he said. Tom straightened up like he'd been practicing. "We understand there's been a significant misunderstanding about the business investment," he began in his sales pitch tone. "Carol made an investment that unfortunately didn't perform as expected." My stomach nodded. The audacity of calling theft a misunderstanding made me grip my fork so hard my knuckles whitened. "You mean the business that never existed?" I asked. "The franchise that had no record of you." Melissa dabbed at her dry eyes with her napkin, warming up for tears. In the business world, Tom continued smoothly. "This kind of financial maneuvering happens all the time. Cash flow problems, delayed returns. Sir, this is a Thanksgiving dinner, not Wolf of Wall Street." Jake interrupted. "You stole Mom's money." Aunt Edith, who'd been quietly eating, muttered, "I knew I should have brought popcorn instead of cranberry sauce." "We were going to pay it back." Melissa finally spoke. "We just got underwater while floating on Mom's boat." Jake shot back. The table went silent. Forks scraped against plates. "We sold the boat," Melissa said, tears starting. "Last week." Pat looked up from his plate. "That's weird because I was at the marina yesterday." Mom's retirement was still there in slip 14. Melissa's tears dried instantly. I felt a strange mix of vindication and heartbreak watching her lie collapse. My mother, ever the peacemaker, turned to Tom. "Perhaps a payment plan could be arranged? Family is family." Dave asked point blank, "How exactly do you plan to pay Carol back?" "We're talking about over $100,000. Tom pulled out a folded paper. "We can commit to $100 a month while we get back on our feet, then reassess in a year." I did the mental math and felt my chest tighten. My retirement paid back at $1,200 a year. Ted actually choked on his wine. "That's over 90 years, he sputtered. "She'd be 155 years old when it's paid off. We'd increase payments as our situation improves," Tom said defensively. "And when would that be?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "After you find new victims?" Melissa started crying dramatically. "See, this is why we can't have a civilized conversation." "The worst has already been proven," I said quietly. "We're just trying to figure out what comes next." Ruth served dessert early while my mother suggested we all hold hands and remember what family means. The final punctuation mark came when Ruth's golden retriever Buster jumped up and snagged half the remaining turkey. We all watched in silence as a dog ran off with the main course, a perfect metaphor for my retirement fund. As I drove home alone, I realized family might be forever, but trust once broken might take even longer to fix, definitely longer than Tom's 91-year payment plan. The legal labyrinth. Turns out, when your own child steals from you, the legal system gives you this fun choice between family loyalty and financial survival. Super. After the disaster that was Thanksgiving dinner, I realized the family healing approach wasn't going to get me my money back. Tom's proposed payment plan of $100 a month meant I'd be 155 years old when the debt was paid off, assuming I developed vampire-like immortality along the way. I finally worked up the courage to meet with a lawyer. Her name was Diane, and her office had that expensive leather smell that immediately made me worry about her hourly rate. She wore a navy blue suit and reading glasses on a chain around her neck, which she put on to review the documents I'd brought, the PI's report, the credit card statements, the forged checks, all neatly organized in a 3-ring binder. Because if there's one thing retired school secretaries know how to do, it's organize paperwork. Diane looked at me with that special mix of pity and professional interest. She flipped through the evidence, making small, sounds that lawyers must learn in law school. You have a solid case, she said, finally removing her glasses. Identity theft, fraud, forgery. These are all criminal offenses, and the evidence is quite compelling. She leaned forward. But I have to ask, are you prepared to potentially send your daughter to jail? Because that's a possible outcome if you pursue criminal charges. Talk about impossible questions. Was I ready to be the mother who sent her own daughter to prison? The grandmother who explained to her grandkids why mommy was wearing an orange jumpsuit? I just want my money back. I said quietly, I'm not looking to punish them. I just need to survive. Diane nodded. That's understandable. We have options. We can pursue civil litigation to recover the funds without criminal charges, but collecting a judgment can be difficult, especially if they've already spent the money or hidden assets. My next stop was the police station. The officer who took my report was younger than my son, with a baby face. He kept typing my story into his computer with 2 fingers, occasionally looking up to clarify details. And you gave them the initial $50,000 voluntarily? He asked, emphasizing voluntarily like it was the only important part. Under false pretenses, I explained. They invented a fake business opportunity. Officer Babyface nodded vaguely. This sounds like a civil matter, ma'am. A family dispute over an investment gone bad. I pushed the folder with the PI's findings across the desk. They forged my signature on withdrawal slips. They opened credit cards in my name without my knowledge. That's identity theft, not a family dispute. He flipped through the documents reluctantly. I'll file the report, but the DA might not pursue charges in family matters like this. They tend to view it as complicated. Pursuing legal action against family is like trying to swim through molasses, technically possible but exhausting and messy. The system that should protect victims moves at a glacial pace when those victims share DNA with their abusers. When word got out that I was considering legal action, relatives I hadn't spoken to in years were suddenly very concerned about my spiritual well-being. My cousin Dolores called to remind me that forgiveness is divine. My Uncle Richard left a voicemail telling me I was being unchristian and vengeful. Even my prayer circle leader whispered, family matters should stay within the family. Meanwhile, Diane kept bringing me back to reality. Even if we win a judgment, collecting is another mountain to climb. They could declare bankruptcy, hide assets, or make minimal payments for years. And all the while, you'll be paying legal fees. The numbers she wrote were depressing. I might spend $15,000 in legal fees to chase money I might never fully recover. One concrete example. Even with a court judgment, I'd need to pay additional fees for asset searches, wage garnishment filings, and property liens, with no guarantee of success. Things went from bad to absurd when I received a certified letter from Melissa and Tom, a cease and desist notice clearly printed from some legal template website. The letter demanded I cease and desist from making defamatory statements about them. Apparently, telling people they stole from me was damaging to their reputation. They steal my life savings, then threaten to sue me for talking about it. As I weighed my options, I faced practical hurdles at every turn. Filing identity theft reports required hours of paperwork and multiple visits to different agencies. Small claims court had strict monetary limits below what they'd stolen. Civil court meant expensive expert witnesses and depositions. I finally filed charges 3 months after that first confrontation dinner. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I realized something important. Loving my daughter didn't mean I had to be her victim. Her actions had consequences, and protecting her from those consequences wouldn't help either of us. The family Christmas card list got significantly shorter after that. I became the bad guy in many relatives' stories. But for the first time since this whole mess began, I slept through the night. The grandkid guilt trip. Nothing complicates family betrayal quite like innocent children who have no idea their parents are financial con artists. My grandkids, Emma and Jack, ages 8 and 10, were the true casualties in this whole mess. I'd been Grammy to them since they were born, the one who babysit every Wednesday, who knew exactly how Jack liked his peanut butter sandwiches cut diagonally, never in rectangles, and who could braid Emma's hair exactly the way she wanted for her dance recitals. 3 days after I filed the police report, my phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. Until this misunderstanding is resolved, we think it's best the kids don't visit. Weekly grandma duties canceled by text message. No discussion, no transition plan for the kids, just immediate grandma removal. I tried calling Emma on her emergency phone. No answer. I tried again the next day. Still nothing. When I checked social media, I discovered I'd been blocked from viewing their accounts where they regularly posted photos of my grandchildren. I sent birthday cards with gift cards inside. They came back marked, returned to sender, in Melissa's handwriting. My voicemails went unanswered. My emails about the garden Emma had helped me plant received nothing but silence. The worst part was learning what the kids were being told. My sister Ruth, who still attended family gatherings, reported that the children were hearing that Grandma is confused about money and Mommy and Daddy are helping Grandma, but she's angry about it. My own grandchildren were being taught that I was mentally unstable, that their parents were the helpful ones, and that my anger was irrational, the perfect narrative to ensure they wouldn't question my sudden absence. About a month into this blackout, my phone rang with Jack's name on the screen. Grammy? His little voice came through, slightly hushed. Why didn't you come to my baseball game? I hit a double, and Coach said my form was excellent. I sat down hard. I didn't know you had a game. Sweetheart. I would have been there if I knew. Mom said she told you about it. His voice had that confused quality children get when adult stories don't match. She said you were too busy. How do you explain financial fraud to a third grader without bad-mouthing his parents? You don't. There must have been a mix-up with the message. I said instead, I would never miss your game on purpose. I gotta go, he whispered suddenly. Dad's coming back from the garage. The line went dead. Emma's school had a grandparents' day in May, an event I'd attended every year since she started kindergarten. I discovered it afterward through Facebook photos posted by another grandmother. There in the background was Emma sitting beside Melissa's neighbor, a woman I'd met exactly once at a block party. They'd sent a substitute grandma rather than allow me to attend. The thought of Emma explaining this to her friends, while knowing I was just miles away, broke something inside me. I kept sending gifts, hopeful some might reach them. I later learned from Ruth that the kids received them, but were told they came from a friend rather than from me. 3 months into this separation, Melissa texted, "Please stop trying to buy the children's affection with constant gifts. It's confusing them." I wasn't trying to buy affection. I was desperately maintaining a thread of connection with children I loved deeply, who until recently had loved me back. The real heartbreak came during my legal action for visitation rights. The courtroom was cold in every sense. Melissa and Tom sat with their lawyer, me with Diane. The judge looked tired before we started. Melissa testified that I was mentally unstable and financially irresponsible, rich accusations from someone who'd stolen my life savings. My lawyer presented evidence of my relationship with the kids, photos, school projects, testimony from teachers who'd seen me at every school event for years. The judge ordered supervised visitation, 2 hours twice a month at a family visitation center. The kind of place where non-custodial parents with abuse histories see their kids. That's what our relationship had been reduced to. The first visit was agony. Emma and Jack arrived looking uncertain, holding their father's hands tightly. The social worker explained the rules. No discussing the legal case, no negative comments about parents, no unapproved gifts. "Are you still mad at us?" Emma finally asked, her voice small. "Mad at you? Sweetheart, I could never be mad at you. Why would you think that?" She looked down at her shoes, the new ones I hadn't helped pick out. "Mom said you have anger issues, and that's why we can't see you at your house anymore." They'd stolen my money, my security, my relationship with my grandchildren, and now they were stealing my character in the eyes of the people I loved most. I'm not angry with anyone. I lied, because what else could I say? With a social worker watching, I just miss you both very much. By the end of our 2 hours, Jack showed me his baseball cards, and Emma told me about her science project. But the easy comfort we'd once had was gone, replaced by a caution that broke my heart. As they left, they gave me quick, awkward hugs, the kind you give to relatives you only see at Christmas, not the full-body tackles they used to greet me with. Finding humor in the wreckage. They say tragedy plus time equals comedy. In my case, it took about 6 months and 3 glasses of wine to find the absurd humor in my situation. I'm not saying I was sitting around laughing about losing my life savings. That part still stings like hell. But sometimes when life hands you a catastrophe, you either laugh or completely lose your mind. I chose laughter, mostly because the padded rooms at the psychiatric hospital probably don't have wine. The breaking point came when I got a call from a collection agency about one of the credit cards Melissa and Tom had opened in my name. The agent on the phone had this nasal voice that made everything sound like an accusation. "Mrs. Griffin, we're calling about your outstanding balance of $12,483.92. He said, "That's not my credit card." I explained for what felt like the 100th time. It was fraudulently opened by my daughter. There was a pause. Then, "Ma'am, the real owner would know about these charges. I'm going to need to verify your identity." I had to prove I was myself to discuss a debt that wasn't mine. When I started laughing, the poor guy probably thought I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had, a little bit. After that call, something shifted. I started seeing the dark humor in my situation. I created a list on my refrigerator titled, "Things My Daughter Bought with My Retirement." Every time the PI or the credit card companies uncovered a new purchase, I'd add it to the list. My personal favorite was the $600 dog treadmill they bought for their chronically overweight pug, Winston. This dog, afraid of plastic bags, garden hoses, and his own reflection, used the treadmill exactly once, got his stubby little legs tangled, and fell off the back. The treadmill now serves as an expensive clothes rack. They also spent $400 on a smart water bottle that tracks hydration and $250 at a store that only sells salt. Himalayan salt, sea salt, smoked salt, truffle salt, like they were preparing for a gourmet apocalypse. When I met with a new financial advisor to figure out how to rebuild from scratch, his face was priceless. This young guy in his early 30s clearly expected a standard pre-retirement consultation. Instead, he got me, a 65-year-old woman starting over with approximately nothing. "So let me get this straight," he said, looking up from his notes. "Your daughter and son-in-law took your entire retirement fund for a fake business, opened multiple credit cards in your name, forged checks, bought a boat they named Mom's Retirement, and are now offering to pay you back at $100 a month." His face cycled through confusion, shock, horror, and finally stunned sympathy, like a slot machine that only pays out in pity. "That about sums it up," I told him. "So, what investment strategy would you recommend for someone whose retirement plan now consists mainly of store coupons and hoping for a quick death?" He didn't laugh. I didn't blame him. I joined a support group for financial fraud victims that met at the community center on Thursday nights. We sat in a circle like emotional shipwreck survivors, clinging to our styrofoam cups of lukewarm coffee. What started as depressing therapy sessions transformed into something like a dark comedy club as we compared the ridiculous excuses our loved ones had given us. Barbara's son claimed credit cards in her name were an early inheritance. Gary's brother sold Gary's car as an environmental favor. Maria's husband mortgaged their home to invest in special water that allegedly aligned chakras and improved golf swings. We created fraud excuse bingo with squares like, "I was going to tell you, it was just temporary," and the free center square, "I was going to pay it all back." When someone hit bingo, they'd raise their coffee cup in a mock toast, and we'd all cheer like we'd won the lottery, a feeling none of us would likely experience again. I began introducing myself at senior center events with gallows humor. "Hi, I'm Carol, and my retirement plan now consists of working until I'm dead and hoping the funeral home runs specials." My financial tragedy became my icebreaker, my calling card in a world where everyone else discussed grandchildren and cruises. The real turning point came during a particularly low moment while downsizing from my house to an apartment I could actually afford on my starting over at 65 budget. I found a box of Mother's Day cards from Melissa, cards with handwritten messages about what a great mom I was, how much she appreciated my sacrifices. The moment I finally stopped crying and started laughing when I found a card from just 2 years ago. Inside, in Melissa's flowing handwriting, "Mom, I owe you everything." I laughed until my sides hurt. It was the most accidentally honest thing my daughter had ever written to me. She did owe me everything, literally everything I had. Now, I have that card framed on my wall. It's both a painful reminder and an unintentionally truthful statement. When visitors ask about it, I tell them it's conceptual art about irony. Sometimes the universe has a dark sense of humor, and eventually, if you're lucky, you develop one too, rebuilding from the ruins. Nothing says starting over quite like filling out job applications at 65 when your last resume update was during the Clinton administration. Turns out, most employers don't consider raised a financial criminal as relevant work experience, and survived catastrophic betrayal doesn't fit neatly into the skills section. When I wrote detail-oriented, I had to resist adding, except when it comes to noticing my daughter stealing my entire retirement fund. My retirement dream transformed into becoming the oldest new hire at the local bookstore, working alongside college students who call me ma'am. "This is the scanner, Mrs. Griffin. It reads the barcodes." "Yes, thank you, Tyler. I was using barcode scanners while your parents were still in diapers." I smile at customers even when I want to scream. I had to sell my house. The one with the garden I'd tended for 20 years, the kitchen I'd remodeled myself, the back porch where I'd imagined spending retirement mornings with coffee and crossword puzzles. I downsized to a one-bedroom apartment where my grandkids sleep on an air mattress during their court-ordered visits. The first time they came over, Emma asked why my house had shrunk. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that Mommy and Daddy took all of Grammy's money? You don't. You just say, Grammy wanted something cozier, and pretend the air mattress is a fun camping adventure. My new financial plan includes extreme couponing, working part-time until I'm 80, and hoping Social Security doesn't collapse before I do. I've become the person who knows exactly when the grocery store marks down rotisserie chickens. My friends with intact retirement accounts invite me to lunch, and I've perfected ordering the cheapest menu item while pretending I'm just not hungry. The irony of working in a bookstore where I regularly shelve self-help books about trusting your intuition isn't lost on me. Yesterday, I shelved boundaries with family members right next to toxic parents, toxic children. I've read the first chapter of every financial recovery book during breaks. None have chapters titled, "So Your Daughter Stole Your Life Savings. Now what?" I joined a financial recovery support group where I'm the only member whose scammer shares DNA. When I explained my situation, there was that awkward silence that happens when your rock bottom makes everyone else's look like a minor stumble. Frank, who lost $50,000 to cryptocurrency fraud, patted my hand and said, "At least you can choose your friends, not your family." Small comfort when your family chooses your bank account. My once robust credit score now hovers around "please don't laugh at my loan application" territory. When I applied for a small personal loan to cover moving expenses, the loan officer actually said, "Oh," when he saw my credit report. Just, "Oh," with a world of judgment packed into those two letters. I've become an expert in survival skills, which utility companies don't check credit scores, how to negotiate with debt collectors, which thrift stores get the best donations. Last month, I furnished my entire kitchen for $27 at a church rummage sale and felt like I'd won the lottery. Despite everything, I've discovered unexpected strengths in my forced financial reinvention. The library has become my sanctuary. I've started a container garden on my tiny balcony, just herbs and a tomato plant, but watching them grow feels like a metaphor. My neighbor Edith and I started a weekly card game where we bet with pennies and laugh until we cry. The bookstore introduced me to people who've become my unlikely support system. Zoe, with her purple hair and literature opinions, defends me when customers get snippy. My manager Steve gives me the best shifts and pretends not to notice when I need an extra break. I'm recovering financially through a patchwork of solutions. The civil case resulted in wage garnishment for Melissa and Tom. Nowhere near what they took, but something. Social Security helps, though I had to take it early. My siblings offer support without pity, which I've learned to accept gracefully. 3 months ago, Steve promoted me to manager, noting that anyone who can survive what you did clearly has excellent crisis management skills. The pay increase meant fixing my car's brakes without sacrificing next month's rent. I've developed a talent for creative problem solving that no business degree could teach. Last week, I opened a new retirement account with just $25. The financial advisor tried to dissuade me, saying the minimum was usually higher, but I insisted. It's about taking back control, starting over, believing in a future worth saving for. When I look at my life now, the smaller space, the tight budget, the derailed plans, I could easily sink into bitterness. Some days I do, but most days I focus on what I'm building rather than what was taken. I've learned to find joy in small victories, a perfectly timed coupon, a kind word from a stranger, the satisfaction of paying a bill on time. My new life might be smaller, but it's mine, bought and paid for with hard-earned wisdom that no one, not even family, can steal. The strangest lesson from this whole ordeal, Family betrayal taught me more about myself than 65 years of regular living ever did. I discovered I'm tougher than I thought, more resilient than I knew, and capable of rebuilding when everything falls apart. Starting over at retirement age became a plot twist in a story longer and weirder than expected. Like a tree after a storm, I bent but didn't break. So if your family dinner feels tense this holiday, remember my story. At least your daughter probably isn't sailing away on a boat named after your stolen retirement fund. What unexpected